Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-host of the Seeds of Tao podcast alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. We're also the co-owners of the Seeds of Tao education platform, an incubator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs, as we sometimes like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we are here doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful Regenerative Business Economies Network, aka RegenBen, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build and the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now.
Hello and welcome to the Seeds of Tao podcast. I have Hoda Mohajerani on the air with us, and I thank you for your time this morning. It's my morning. I can't remember if it's your morning as well right now.
It is my morning.
Because you're
Hi,
Pacific.
Joshua.
It's good to see you.
Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily where you're based, and we'll get into your where you've lived historically, right? So we'll get into your story and where you're from and all the wonderful things. It's been great to chat with you and get to know you over the last little bit, because I really enjoy the intention that you bring into your business. And so as we get started and we start to get to know a little bit about you, the listeners here, if you could share just what got you up this morning, and then let's then explore what gets you excited to do the work that you do.
Well, what got me up this morning is what gets me up every morning, and that's my cat.
Oh, it's your cat. Okay.
My cat, Hafiz, named after the great Persian mystical poet, he gets me up every morning like clockwork around 5:30. And so that's the physical alarm clock that I have.
I love it.
My internal, what gets me up every morning is what I would call dharmic obligation.
Okay.
It's a sense of obligation, and I use that word with immense gratitude, and it's a privilege to have an obligation. It's not a burden. It's a entrustment of something truly meaningful and great that I feel an obligation towards serving and fulfilling. And that gets me up every morning, no matter how beat up I'm feeling. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important as a regenerative entrepreneur or an impact entrepreneur to really have that sense of obligation to do something to create change. And so I'm glad that is a strong force in your life. Tell us about your work and the work that you do with your business, and let's talk about how you got started.
Well, typically I tend to answer these sorts of questions by working my way from the inside out. And I'd like to try a different approach and work my way from outside in on this podcast. So the outermost circle, if you will, of the spiral or of the concentric circles is that we are an organic ayurvedic food and beverage company. We deliver and offer products, elixirs, and snacks that are based on the Ayurvedic principles, heralding from India. They taste great and they're good for you, not just on a allopathic functional level, but in a systemic way, because we're working within the system of Ayurveda, right? So that's the outermost level of what we do. The next level is our sourcing. What we do is we pay immense attention and are deeply committed to how we're sourcing our ingredients. And organic is an absolute baseline for us, but the where we're working towards is becoming 100% regenerative. And right now, the key ingredients in our products that comprise the bulk of the product, for example, the almond milk in the elixirs, or the ghee, or the honey, these are the key components, and we're sourcing those regeneratively already, right? So sort of the second level is the supply chain and the dedication to that. Then the third circle internally is the charitable work that we offer, because we've created a business model that gives to 7 different charitable causes, one related to each of the chakras, because the company is called Chakra Chai. And so that creates, if you will, a macro cosmic correlation between the wellness of the individual client, customer purchasing Chakra Chai, and the wellness and the well-being of less privileged humans and animals and any sentient being, essentially, that requires our support and our protection. So we have 7 different charitable causes that we donate to from the top line of our revenue, not net profits, right? And then you come deeper in, and what we're doing within the creation of our business model is having designed a business model that will allow us to have a cradle-to-cradle system, become a part of and an ally of the natural interconnected order of life. So what that means is developing relationships with local and international farmers, seeing how we can grow inputs that will go, so to speak, from farm to bottle, from farm to product, and then how we can mobilize and proliferate the information and the wisdom around indigenous practices and around the challenges, which, I'm using the word challenge because typically, especially in California, people love to take a positive spin on things. But, if I'm British about it for a moment, essentially the nightmare that we're facing with globalization and ecological and food insecurity. So, bringing that into how this business model is structured. So it's a circular business model, right? And and then if you go again deeper into that, imagine the Fibonacci sequence of a seashell or a plant as it's unfurling, right? That's kind of how we created the blueprint or the architecture of our business model. And then you go deeper yet, and then you reach basically organizational culture and organizational capacities, right? So how is our team, how is our organization actually modeling and embodying regeneration? And really, what is regeneration? And that question of what is regeneration then brings us essentially to almost the core of Chakra Chai, which is consciousness. Mm-hmm. So we are dedicated. We're an organization with all of those circles. On the outermost, you've got the food and beverage, consumer packaged goods, in quotes, right? Essentially, we're an organization disguised as a food and beverage company. What we're looking to do is to accelerate the elevation of human consciousness. And here we go to the core of the matter, the radius of the circle, which is the heart. Mm-hmm. So for us, love is the point of departure for all of existence, for all of creation, and for everything that drives us. So how do we develop a relationship with love as a, just, simplistically said, as a phenomenon, right? And then how do we allow for that force to actually transform each individual's personal growth? Mm-hmm. And then how does that personal growth elevate their consciousness? And then how does this now more evolved, more open, more loving, more awake and precise human being operate within the organization known as Chakra Chai, or known as the team, right? And then how is this affecting so we're looking to change the internal consciousness and the internal culture of the individual, transform that may then inform the transformation of the organizational culture, and it will keep rippling out all the way to the shelf and to the customer, right? And just to end, that is the reason for that is because what we are witnessing right now in the world is nothing more than the reflection or the manifestation of the level of collective consciousness that we're on.
Yes.
So we would like to address that, and that's what we're doing in our company. Yeah. Does that answer
beautiful.
Your question?
It does. It's a great answer. I love how you really took it from the more external view and brought us in closer to the deep impact that you're building with Chakra Chai. And with that, I mean, you kind of think of what comes to mind is like Simon Sinek's start with why and kind of move outward and really the strong purpose. But in reality, so many businesses within the regenerative movement that are moving towards a new way of business, right? That is building towards the regenerative economy. That it looks very different to the outside world, I guess you could say, a food company. But the intention, the energy that's going into everything really does make transformational experiences in ways that you can't really perceive from the outside. So that I thank you for kind of bringing us ever deeper into an understanding of what Chakra Chai is doing, what Chakra Chai is. So let's explore now how you actually came to this journey of building Chakra Chai as an entrepreneur. How did you end up being an entrepreneur? I think that's where we could really start the stories. Like, was it something that you knew you were always going to do? What's led you to becoming an entrepreneur, building this business?
That's a really great question, Joshua. So a little context is that ever since I was a teenager and walked into an Oxfam, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with Oxfam, it's an international charity, and they have a lot of these different charitable stores, thrift stores. And as a young, I don't know, I was like 15 or something, I walked into an Oxfam and found this gorgeous coffee table book called The Last of the Amazonias, or The Last of the Amazon. And I was fascinated, absolutely fascinated by seeing the cover, with the picture of the indigenous tribes. And then, I just, pored over this book and, needless to say, I purchased it, took it home, and immediately, like a day or two later, like contacted Greenpeace, and then went and started to work with Greenpeace and,
Wow.
on a grassroots level. And that was kind of the beginning of the journey. And then that took me, the beginning of my personal journey, and I will come to how Chakra Chai was founded and why. So then that led into... that actually really led to experimentation. Back then, we just called it drugs. We didn't call it medicine because it was the 80s, late 80s, but experimentation with psychotropic medicine, right? And of course, that wow moment when you see the photonic interconnection of all life and our place within it was really monumental for me and very cathartic. So, I would spend then days crying when I would afterwards, when I would be walking and there'd be a jackhammer drilling into the earth or into the tarmac, and I'd just be, I'd feel it and I'd start crying and have a visceral experience of this rape and pillaging of Mother Earth, right? So in short, I basically became a hippie, right? For a minute. And then that led me to understanding the violence and becoming, researching more and more and understanding the violence that is associated with the usurpation, the usurping of land and the big corporations and how they're working, and the violence against the people and the indigenous. So then that really led me towards human rights and human rights advocacy. And my background is a Sufi Persian background. So I paid particular attention and had a particular passion for Muslim women's rights and did a lot of work around the marsh Arabs of Iraq because they were being displaced because of the oil under the marshes in southern Iraq. So, all of these things, of course, alongside this, I was only eating organic. I was vegetarian for a while, but never, ever, ever did I join the dots on my own of becoming a food and beverage entrepreneur or going into the food business and thinking about it in terms of food systems, right? And in fact, my life took me to an entirely different trajectory, and I really became deeply involved with arts and music as a cultural catalyst and change catalyst for a while. And what happened was something deeply, not only significant, but I also retrospectively understand it as deeply symbolic of our relationship with Mother Earth, which is that I became pregnant and had and lost my only child. His name is Arta, which in Avestan Persian means truth. And this was in 2017. So I just kind of fast tracked us from the late 80s to 2017, right? Yeah. Just, giving a little time travel experience to our listeners there. So from the 80s, from the early 90s until today, I have cultivated a practice, a spiritual practice of mantras, prayers, meditation. So it's been almost, about 30 years, and a year after, in 2017, when Arta was with me for only 4 days, he was prematurely born and couldn't survive physically. And it was truly the most visceral and cathartic, initiatory experience of my life. And initiation plays a great role in what we're doing, because we are entering with the regenerative movement. I'd like to keep bringing this back, because people might think, I'm just going off on a tangent, but I'm not. These are all elements of the dimension that we're walking towards and that we're creating as we're walking towards. We're essentially pioneering, rediscovering, redefining through the regenerative movement something that has previously existed, like an old knowledge, like an old occult or esoteric knowledge that rests with the indigenous across the world. And we are now wanting to unveil it. We are now wanting to utilize it, but very much in line with indigenous cultures. We need to be initiated into this. We can't just haphazardly misappropriate things now under the guise of regeneration, and then try to do it right. So what my son Arta did essentially was initiate me into, he got rid of all the riffraff inside of me, essentially. All the pretensions to, I want to do this, I want to do that, this is my career, that's my ambition, that's, essentially he got rid of a lot of the ego struggles that I had been struggling with despite 30 years of spiritual practice. And a year after his passing, I was deeply engrossed in meditation. I was alone in my then home in Austria. It was a 550-year-old stone house with domed ceilings, very much like a monastery or, a convent or something. It was really hermetic, right? And I was alone there around January, around his birthday, deep in meditation. And his presence appeared in the meditational space within. Right. And I was overjoyed, of course, because I sensed the presence of my son and felt this reuniting and remembering with him. And he literally spoke. I mean, those of our listeners who have meditated, they know, the universe is sound and light. Okay, so this is all through sonic and photonic information, right? He spoke the words Chakra Chai. Literally, Chakra Chai. And so I'm in child pose, and there's an internal dialogue happening, and first of all, and I've said this on other podcasts, I was really proud of him. I thought, this is a great name. Now, what is it? And why are you telling me this name? And clever bugger that he is, he said, and this is verbatim, you are permitted to move on this, but you don't have to, because I know you're exhausted. Now, at this point, I didn't know what this is. Chakras, yes, I have a background in comparative religions in terms of my studies. So I know of Hinduism, I know of the chakras. We've all had a cup of chai, especially me being Persian. So I knew that it had something to do with the chakras and something to do with the chai. Yes, but what is it really? And I didn't jump in as I typically do with both feet and say, yes, I accept. I just kind of hung out with him. And then about 3 weeks later, I went back into meditation in the hopes that I would be able to reconnect with him and say, look, I've thought about it and I'll accept, right? And I did go into meditation. He did reappear, not like a ghost or anything like that, just like a presence, right? And I said, I accept. Now, when I said I accept, he showed me what it is that I had accepted. And the picture was so detailed, and it was so, a lot of it was very detailed, at least that, let's say the roadmap and the blueprint was there.
Mm-hmm.
And it floored me because I was shown how this is a vehicle that is supposed to be, it's connected with the food crisis, with regenerative farming. It's connected with impact and mission driven, if you will, charitable organizations. I literally, as this second meditation was ongoing, I was given the mouthfeel and the taste on the palate. I mean, I was having an embodied spiritual mystical experience, becoming conscious of the taste of a product that has not yet been created on my palate. The outlines of the logo that then my dearest friend, who became one of the founding members of Chakra Chai, supported me in realizing the logo and everything. So anyhow, I came out of this meditation and thought, oh shit, what did I do? So that's the origin story of Chakra Chai. And that was in 2018. We incorporated the company in 2019. And I spent nearly 3 years just shy of 3 years in research and development, together with an Ayurvedic expert. And then we had the whole COVID situation thrust upon us. And we came to market in July 2021. And so we've only really been at market for 2 years this July. And it has been a very slow, largely intentionally slow growth, but also partly because of many different variables, which we can get into, time allowing, which may be useful for other listeners and other regenerative entrepreneurs, as to what some of the things one comes across going, forging this path, right?
Building this really intentional business and conscious business. Yeah, this is a great journey that you've shared with us, right? And an experience that I don't know that many of us get to experience in life, is being able to commune and feel the presence of a loved one that has passed away. And I don't know that if it's something that more of us can experience, but I want to just mention here that I believe that there is a profound moment in everybody's life, whether it comes through a passing of a loved one, a understanding of a past, being able to work through and cope and understand the passing of a loved one, or many other instances in our lives that we come to, a health challenge. You were mentioning that we kind of come into this space with new beginnings, a new understanding, reestablishing ourselves when we're building these types of organizations. I want to kind of see if we can take this here. Like you mentioned that being a big start and beginning of the work that you were moving forward. How does that experience kind of take you into this, and where, because I know that our energy can be really, really high when we have those experiences, but how does that experience now carry you through the rest of the business as well? Because sometimes there's going to be lows, and there's going to be times that we doubt where the intention and the reason and the start of what we were creating this for, right? Or we lose track maybe, right? And for me, if I can reattach and reassociate myself to why I'm really doing this, it helps me and carries me through those kind of harder moments. So I'm kind of asking, how is this, because very strong start to your business carried you through some of these building this business and going through COVID with this as well, and maybe share an experience, if you could, of a challenging time and how you've been able to come through that as well.
Let's take a moment for a brief promotional break and talk about the state of our world. There are famines, floods, and fires in our backyards, a global recession affecting our economies, and war and conflict tearing down our relationships with one another. You see it in the news, feel it in your wallet, and talk about it in your social networks. It's hard to think that it doesn't affect you in your personal life and bring you down in your work. Except you want to regenerate our lands, turn our economies into circular ones, and do it in collaboration and community with others. How are you supposed to do that when it seems like everyone's working against you? You're an entrepreneur and you have a business that's going to help us solve these problems and bring these solutions? You're telling me you're going to change people's minds and raise capital for your cause and bring in triple bottom line profits? You must be an optimist, a dreamer, or completely out of touch. Who's going to buy your products or services, take you up on that offer, or help you fund your do-good business? We will. Who are we? We are the Regenerative Business Economies Network, a connected group of impact entrepreneurs, peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenerative enterprise building. Together, we take on the financial and personal risks of building regenerative enterprises. It's all of us together that creates the change we want to see. We must believe in each other and the work we've devoted ourselves to. If you want to be supported and also lend support to impact entrepreneurs like yourself, follow the promotional link in the podcast description or head over to seedsofdao.com and click on Join the Community. With that, let's get back to the episode.
There is a poet called Jules. She has a poem about tattoos, and the only two lines I remembered that were seared or tattooed in my memory were the final verse where she defines, what's the mystery behind tattoos, right? And she says, it's the pleasure of creation and the adrenaline of commitment. Now, especially in today's world, because it is still and after all largely built on Newtonian mechanics and post-industrial revolution, neoliberalism, and data collection modalities and methodologies, we love to speak about facts and data, and facts and data are important, but they will continue to change. What I am interested in are unchanging universal truths and principles. And there is that truth or that universal principle and phenomenon that we all know. When we fall in love with somebody, there's the honeymoon phase, there's all the sparks and the excitement and the mystery and the intrigue and the discovery phase, right? But how love actually grows is through the commitment and through, like, falling in love is like a wave that comes and carries you, right? And marriage is becoming a brilliant surfer who can actually ride the wave,
I like that.
to shore, safely to shore, right? To do anything in life, we need to have and cultivate fortitude. We need and must cultivate perseverance and commitment, and not have these be negative words. These are very, very positive words. These are deep subcellular strength words, right? So just as a parent has that commitment, a healthy parent, a psycho-emotionally healthy parent has that commitment to their child for the betterment of their child, so too do I and my unfailing team have that commitment to Chakra Chai as a vehicle. And as one journalist described it, the brand from the beyond. It's something that was offered to us, and now we're stewarding it, right? So this stewardship is how that original love, or that original communication and the original spark or inspiration, that has translated into stewardship of it and the development of it through thick and thin. So does that answer the first part of your question?
It does. It does. And I was really trying to understand, just really, because I consider different moments in my life to be really impactful to the work that I'm currently doing. But then I also see those moments in my day to day, or going through challenge or whatever. And I think this is relatable to others' experiences as well. And you just kind of clarified that, is when we get that initial life experience that helps us set a certain path, it is something that can help us carry through, but it's not necessarily going to be the thing that gets us to the goal that we desired, or the piece. And so what you're saying is essentially it's about that momentum starting, but it's having a loved one, or a significant other, and having that relationship carry that initial love it has to be worked upon. It has to be devoted to. It has to be worked and built upon. Right?
Yes. Let me give you a concrete, if I may. Let me give you and our listeners a concrete example that will look. We all those of us who are hearing this podcast, listening to this podcast, we now know the original story. Right? That luminous, deep inspiration, all of that. And that's my story. And I offer it to anybody, first and foremost, who has had the experience of losing a loved one. And I offer it as a story that can be relatable on many different levels. However, we know that my story is positioned within the greater narrative, the greater story of the crisis of consciousness, the crisis of the ecological crisis, the micro and macrobiome crisis that we are really also a crisis of democracy that right now we are experiencing. So this story of Hoda and Arta and Chakra Chai is positioned within all of this. Okay. Now, when I have to jump in, because I still do, because we're such a small company, right? We are such a small company. We're such a small team. I sometimes still have to jump in at the production manufacturing kitchen to help produce, right?
Right.
So when I'm weighing out, or when I'm going through the process of the production, I want a good length of rope to hang myself with. I really do. I can't bloody stand. I love the act of producing, but I hate mechanics, right? With it, like, it's antithetical to my constitution. My constitution is, let's talk theory and philosophy and all of that, right? And then I have to be in there down to the last gram, and the cold supply chain logistics and the delivery times and the invoicing and the blah 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 blah. If you see these small parts as fragmented chaos, then of course we won't be able to get ourselves out of bed the next day. We won't. We take all of that, and then I think, okay, this product, okay, that had all of that go into it and more, right? This is a part of that greater whole of our context, of our ecological context, of our cultural context, of our personal context. And so thankfully, I and my team, we find our way back through this. Through the ever-changing variables and daily seemingly banalities, right? We find our way back through to the axis, and the axis is love, right? That's why in an ashram, you want to go and you want to discover the greatest name of God so that you can move mountains. You want to be able to fly like, whatever it was called, hidden tiger, crouching tiger, hidden dragon. You want all of those powers, right? And you arrive at the ashram or at the khanara, and they say, here's a bag of lentils, 100-kilogram bag of lentils. Can you please clean it and check for any rocks in there? And if you can't find God in the lentil, you won't be able to find God anywhere. So that's kind of what brings us through our daily tasks back to center. And believe me, at least once a day, I think, I've had enough. I just want to go under my Bodhi tree. But I interpret it as a form of ascetic exercise, You can eat an almond a day, or you can try to get a product out to market that has dry harvested regenerative almonds in it only. I can tell you one is harder than the other.
Oh my goodness. And speaking to that in itself is an entirely another topic and construct, and getting through these really difficult things, and sometimes it's mundane, and you don't see the difficulties of working through the trivial stuff. But then there's also the working through the really difficult things, right? And I think it works the same, like you're saying. It's how do we see the purpose, and you have to be really intentional. You have to be conscious of what you're creating and bring it back so that you can carry forward on these missions, so that it's just not the one-off moment of, I had this really expansive experience with my loved one that passed away, and then it didn't carry through. And I know your son gave you the opportunity to take it or not, but you decided to take it. And I know that if you took it and then you dropped it or didn't follow through all the way, what that might do for you as a person, right? Because you see that in life, right? You see people have these wonderful experiences in their lives, and they may latch onto it for a moment, but then when the realities of life come at you, and the difficulties, the mundane side of it, or even just the complexity of it, right, wear you down, it doesn't diminish your ability to come back and really have the energy to see it through. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Right, find the piece of God within that mundane piece of work that you're doing, whatever it is, right? And I think that's quite beautiful, the way to look at it. I think we're coming to a spot here where the listeners can maybe take some lessons from this journey. And so if you can, with me, let's explore this for a little bit. We're entrepreneurs, you and I, and there are entrepreneurs listening to this, and we're a different type of breed, right? And when we have these interviews, I bring it to this conclusion all the time, but everybody's conclusion is different. We learn different lessons from everybody's stories, right? So let's just explore this for a little while. What do you hope the entrepreneur that is building towards regenerative enterprise, building towards a greater not just your enterprise, but a greater regenerative future and economy, what would you hope they would take away from your story, and share a little bit about that, please?
That's quite a high responsibility question. So I'd like to quote Ram Dass. He said, "I wish for you all the wisdom and the knowledge of my experience without the experience itself." So that's the first thing. The second is the why is beyond purpose-driven, mission-driven, impact, even beyond regenerative. Mm-hmm. The why goes back to, why am I alive? Why am I here? Who am I? The essential questions that have been asked through time immemorial, those must now consciously and necessarily be asked by those of us who are spearheading this new paradigm. Mm-hmm. We must ask that, mm-hmm. because it is so easy to lose sight of the transformation of the self through the vehicle of the business, through the, because there are so many variables, because there are so many, we have supply chain challenges, we have unit economics challenges, we have capital challenges, we have distribution challenges, we have policy challenges, we've got permitting challenges, we've got, should I keep naming it, right?
Yeah.
We have we find an organic thing and then it gets tested and there's residual glyphosates in it. So we've got, toxicity challenge. There are so many challenges that as we get busy trying to create and trying to put out fires at the same time and then navigate our way through this as entrepreneurs, we can forget that, hey, this lifetime, whether or not you believe in reincarnation is besides the point. This life is about you, is about us, is about our evolution. And if we're using business as a vehicle for that, then it's imperative for us as the leaders of those businesses to stay true and committed to the self-evolutionary process through the challenges that we're facing on the horizontal level, right?
Yeah.
I really urge, and there will be people who will dangle the carrot. And I do not say this from a place of wearing rose-tinted glasses, but really from a place of having thought long and hard before I reject certain offers or decide to go the road less traveled to get to the destination, God willing, right? Because there will be people who'll say, you're crazy. Why did you spend this money on doing this when you could have just gone to a co-packer and they have a turnkey solution and you can, at that point, you could have high pressure pasteurized, but now you can't because they've changed the laws in the FDA and the USDA, and it's, almond milk can no longer be HPP, whatever. You can do this and do that, and you'll make a bunch of money, and your product will be out, and you would have scaled quite fast, and, it'll still be good for people. It'll still be organic. It'll still be better than a Coke. Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to reflect the Bhagavad Gita, and actually Vandana Shiva, who's one of my personal heroes, and I think a hero for all of us, in her, relentless work. She quotes the Bhagavad Gita as well, is that, the obligation is what is of value, not the outcome, right?
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that I'm shunning money or that I'm shunning a successful business. But when we're talking about regeneration, if we want to be really honest, we're talking about redefining success, redefining and reassigning value, right? And then something I'd love to, in the beginning, because of my own personal baggage, right? I was really reluctant to sort of reach out to people and ask for help, But something I really advise and offer to anybody listening is please reach out to your network and your network's network and say, I don't know what to do. Help me. And by by virtue of that, I'm going to say right now, I don't know what to do. If you know how to do it better, help me. Help me. Because by joining, again, it's like the web of life. The ant and the bee and the soil and the microorganisms, everybody is just helping each other. And sometimes they're doing it by eating each other, but then their poop helps somebody else. So
yes.
It's like, please help me and allow me to help you in any small way that I can. The more lights connect, the more we will have a luminous grid of people offering goodness of soul, goodness of business, goodness of product, goodness for the earth, good culture. And that's what we want. And that's what we're hoping to realize here, right?
Well, there was a few great takeaways from that, right? And I really do enjoy the being able to ask for help and being humble and open enough to be able to ask for that. It's a hard thing. I think entrepreneurs maybe have a harder time doing that. I don't know if it's the isolation of the entrepreneur because it's a very lonely business, right? To be an entrepreneur. No one else is having to go through the same things. And so you feel like when you ask for help, well, for me, that might be a part of it. Is you feel like you should be able to do it on your own, or that
yes, you feel like
there's not someone there. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
There's not someone there that can take part in the challenge that I am working on, right? But in reality, what it truly is that we're all kind of working through those challenges, and we need to be able to open up and ask for help. And
you know what comes to mind now? The old story about the scorpion who wanted to cross the river and asked the turtle to help him cross the river. Do you know that story?
Say it for the audience and
so a scorpion wants to cross the river and he can't because he'll drown, and he says to the turtle, look, can you or the tortoise, can you please let me ride on your back? And he says, no, you're a scorpion, you're going to sting me. And he says, no, I promise I won't, because you're helping me, right? So they go back and forth. Eventually the benevolent animal accepts and crosses the scorpion to the other side of the river. As soon as they've come on shore, the scorpion stings the turtle, right? And the turtle says, what the hell? You promised me. Why did you do that? He says, it's my nature. Okay? The reason I'm sharing that is because one of the reasons, and we need to be mindful also of whom we turn to for help, right? Because there are a lot of dinosaurs in the many different sectors of our movement and business, our business, whether it's the food side of it or the agriculture side of it or the policy side of it or whatever, right? And they're wolves and they're sharks and they're scorpions. And they're also just unbelievable I can't find an adjective that would be not insulting. For example, I turned to one person early on in the business, right? Early on in the business, I was told by one of our advisors, such and such has just sold their company for hundreds of millions of dollars. Hit them up. They might be a good match for you, right? So I sit down, a company called Chakra Chai, with a pitch deck that has the pictures of, people doing yoga and, the tam and the som and the sam and everything thrown in of all of that, okay? Yes. And the guy listens to everything and he looks at me with a straight face and says, you know what I think it would be? Have you guys thought about approaching the yoga community as your primary adopters? I mean, my jaw dropped to the floor. That the lack of perception, the lack of presence, and then the hubris associated with that ignorance and with that lack of perception, to be sitting with a company called Chakra Chai, reading their deck, supposedly, that has all of this, and then asking if I've considered the yoga community. So sometimes what I'm saying is we'd rather suffer going alone than listening to bullshit advice and suggestions, because that's not what we need. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're looking at so-and-so for advice on how to commercialize the recipe without compromising the medicinal efficacy, or scale the business without using extractive methods of agriculture, right? So we want concrete assistance and we get ridiculous bits of advice. So watch out who you're asking for advice and help from, but don't let it always stop you.
There's the other side of it, right? And I think when you open up the conversation to a help, and you're asking for it, you're going to get both, right? And there's going to be the take it with a grain of salt, but then there's the opportunities for understanding and kind of bridging some of these worlds. Like I honestly, I've had a hard time with the investment side of things, right? When you're talking to investors, they seem very, unless you're talking about their return on investment, everything else is really shallow, right? They're not going to dig deep into a lot of different pieces of your business unless you get someone that's really intentionally enjoys what you're doing and they're passionate about it, right? But there are the openings that you find as you kind of work through it. So I love how you took that. Yes. But there is a but to it, right? There is a giant but of like, there's got to be the right person, and an entrepreneur that really has a strong vision, I think, could see through that really quickly, right? You're going to be a little. I just had a conversation yesterday that was very similar to that, and it's like, wow. And actually, I didn't have that conversation. My wife did, and then she told me about it, and then we proceeded to have this conversation about this conversation that she had, and it was just like, why do we have these types of people that are almost directly? It's like either distracting or directly opposing what you're doing, distracting from or directly opposing. Right. And I think there's a part of this that we're kind of talking about here. It's part of the lesson from what you're saying is you're going to run into these really difficult situations. And you're going to try to open yourself up to learn something new, and you have to, right? Or else you're not going to be able to overcome that barrier, connect to the person that you truly need to solve that challenge. But then you're also going to get some direct opposition or distraction or just temptation even, right? To do the shortcut, to have a solution that's not really a solution. And this is where the test and I think a lot of the strength that we get as entrepreneurs comes from. The strength of character really is, do we do we follow up with the right people? Do we make the right choice in the long term, in the long run, rather than making the short term or quicker, easy route, or just get discouraged and lose track of what we're doing, right? And I think this is kind of what I'm taking away from your story, Hoda, is this, right? Helping to work through these pieces. There's so many. You're going to have this big momentous time at times, and they're going to help you to carry through some of this. But you're going to get through all of the mundane and difficult, and you're going to honestly learn and be strengthened through, and your character is going to change through this process. And it really comes down to having a strong understanding of who you are, why you're doing this. And that's kind of what I'm taking from.
Thank you. I think that's pretty accurate. I often quote André Gide, French author, who said something along the lines of, there's nothing new to say that has not been said before. We're only repeating it because no one was listening, right? So there are colossal figures in history. I'm only going to name one right now. Nelson Mandela. God rest his soul. Nelson Mandela spent over 27 years in prison in apartheid South Africa. We can't even imagine what that takes, because an upset to our system can come from us getting 30 likes instead of 300 likes on Instagram. We don't have the tools to really comprehend what level of commitment, what level of the intensity, concentration of faith, what height of aspiration and purpose, purity of purpose a human being has to have to be able to stay the course in apartheid South African jails, okay, as a political prisoner. So how do we propose to be part of the shift and the change that is necessary, right, in order to be able to regenerate, and through our reconnection with Mother Earth, regenerate our earth, regenerate our true sense of self, regenerate our connection with the force or with the divine, and redefine and realize the beauty and the abundance and the capacity that we have as conscious living entities upon a conscious living planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
A talk I sometimes give is conscious entrepreneurship or conscious business, reclaiming trade as reclaiming commerce as divine stewardship, right? So essentially, is that what we're doing, right? And then the hardships of, oh my God, I'm broke. Oh my God, I'm at the end of my capital runway. Oh my God, we lost this account or didn't gain that account, or, all the challenges that come with it. We have to get up every morning, whether or not you have a cat who'll wake you up at 5.
Yes.
The obligation, the purpose rises us in the morning, gets us through all of the banalities of the day, in which we can see the reflections of what we're building and the greater picture, and our community keeps joining forces. I mean, look how you and I came together.
Mm-hmm.
This, it's, where are you based? In Panama?
Right.
How the hell did a girl from Persia via Paris, London, and Joshua in Panama somehow connect in this web of life to talk regeneration on this podcast? So let's keep on strengthening these ties with one another, and be of service to one another, I think.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I think that's a good place to kind of leave our audience here. Let's build those ties and let's continue. And I largely believe the way that we came together is through shared passions and connection to our purpose. And we kind of began this conversation, your story, through a commitment, a obligation. So those are shared things. How can we, if we feel that we have shared obligations to help people, planet, the future, and we want to reach out to you, Hoda, how do we stay in touch? How do we share your journey, become a part of yours, or you become a part of theirs? How do we reach out?
I would love that. Well, the usual suspects, you can go to our homepage, which is chakrachai.co, and please subscribe so that we can have you. And I rarely write anyway, so you won't be inundated with mass mails or anything like that. That's chakrachai.co. And then you can go to our IG account. It's Chakra Chai Official is the handle. You can find me, Hoda Mohajerani, on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to email me directly, my email is hoda@chakrachai.co. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to learn about the challenges you're facing and also the solutions that you may have come across. Let's have some kind of open source amongst our tribe, amongst our family. Like I said before, I can definitely use a lot of support and a lot of help. Here comes the cat. Yes. This is the cat who wakes me up, and he's actually coming to say, okay, time up.
Good timing.
So that's
Thank you again, Hoda, for joining us. And for those of you that are listening, please check out the Seeds of Tao website, where you could find Hoda's show notes for this episode. You could also, within the description of this, if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or whatever it may be, in the description you'll have a link to that page as well to get the information to contact Hoda. Go ahead.
Oh, I almost forgot, but I didn't. We also created a special promo code for all of your listeners and followers. So that's all caps, SEED, SEED 15, to give you a discount on our product, so you can try our medicinal products. And we use the word seed, obviously, because of Seeds of Tao podcast, yes. And also because the seed is the source of life. And so we wanted to honor that. Seed 15.
Thank you. Seed 15. And we'll also put that in the description for this and in the show notes as well. Thanks again, Hoda. And we hope to have you on the podcast again. Thank you.
Yes, I can't wait. It was really a pleasure. Thank you so much, love.
All right, everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. It really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us to further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies Network, known as RegenBen, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. RegenBen also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests, register to be a guest on the podcast, and share your own regenerative entrepreneur startup story, or any other suggestion you may have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Nah, this may be bye for now. But remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.